I've always been a bit of a skeptic when it came to the supernatural. Ghost stories, haunted houses, and eerie legends never really got under my skin. But that all changed when I stumbled upon an ad on Craigslist that would lead me down a terrifying path I never could have imagined. It was a typical Tuesday evening when I decided to procrastinate a bit longer on my work and browse the free stuff section of Craigslist. Most of the listings were mundane, old furniture or free kittens, but one caught my eye. The title simply read, "Free Antique Doll, Must Go Tonight." Intrigued, I clicked on the ad and was met with a chilling picture of a porcelain doll that sent shivers down my spine. Its lifeless eyes seemed to follow me, and its cracked, pale face gave it an unsettling appearance. The description under the photo was vague, but strangely compelling. It said, "Antique doll from the 1800s, believed to be haunted. Must be picked up tonight. Do not contact after midnight." My curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to send a message to the seller. Within minutes, I received a response from a user named Sarah. She explained that the doll had been in her family for generations and had brought nothing but misfortune and terror. She couldn't bear to keep it any longer and wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible. Sarah provided an address and told me to come by before midnight if I wanted it. Despite my skepticism, I couldn't resist the opportunity for a unique story to share with my friends. I hopped in my car and headed to the address Sarah had given me. The drive took me to a remote, isolated house on the outskirts of town. The night was dark, and the wind whispered through the trees, creating an eerie atmosphere. When I arrived at the house, I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. The place looked abandoned, with overgrown weeds and broken windows. I hesitated, but decided to press on. I walked up to the front door and knocked. Moments later, Sarah opened it. She was a middle-aged woman with tired eyes that seemed to have seen too much. She gave me a thin smile and led me inside. The air was musty, and the dim lighting cast long, ominous shadows on the peeling wallpaper. I could feel my pulse quicken. Sarah handed me the doll, and it was even more unsettling up close. Its porcelain skin was cracked, and its dress, once elegant, was tattered and faded. As I took it, I couldn't help but ask, "Why is it haunted? What happened?" Sarah hesitated, her eyes darting around as if afraid someone might be listening. "Strange things started happening when my family brought this doll into our home," she whispered. "Footsteps in the middle of the night, whispers from empty rooms, and objects moving on their own. But the worst part was the dreams. Horrifying nightmares that plagued us every night." I listened intently, my skepticism slowly giving way to unease. "Then came the accidents," Sarah continued, her voice trembling. "My daughter fell down the stairs, my husband had a car accident, and my sister, she died in her sleep clutching this doll. I can't explain it, but I know that it's connected to all the tragedies in my family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It sounded like a far-fetched horror movie plot, but the fear in Sarah's eyes was real. Desperate to be rid of it, she insisted I take the doll, repeating, "Just promise me you won't keep it for long. Get rid of it as soon as you can, and whatever you do, don't contact me after midnight." I agreed, eager to leave the creepy house. I rushed back to my car, clutching the haunted doll, and drove home as quickly as I could. As I entered my apartment, I felt a profound sense of relief. I placed the doll on my coffee table, and for a moment, I thought I saw its lifeless eyes move. The days that followed were filled with unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, even when I was alone in my apartment. At night, I heard faint whispers and strange creaking sounds. The nightmares were the worst part, vivid and horrifying, filled with images of a sinister presence lurking in the shadows. Weeks turned into months, and the doll's presence in my home grew increasingly unsettling. I decided it was time to get rid of it, just as Sarah had warned. I posted an ad on Craigslist, desperate to pass on the cursed object to someone else. A few days later, I received a message from a user named Emily. She was eager to take the doll off my hands, and I agreed to meet her at a park during the day. As I handed the doll to Emily, a sense of relief washed over me. I warned her about its history, the nightmares, and the strange occurrences. She didn't seem fazed and assured me she could handle it. As I watched Emily walk away with the haunted doll, I couldn't help but wonder if I had just passed on a malevolent force to someone else. Only time would tell if the curse of the doll would continue to haunt those who possessed it. But one thing was certain. It was a chilling story I would never forget. I never imagined that renting out my spare room on Craigslist would lead me down such a dark and terrifying path. It all started when I posted an ad online, looking for a tenant to help with the rent. Times were tough, and I needed the extra cash. Little did I know, I was about to make a deal with the devil himself. Within hours of posting the ad, I received a message from someone named Victor. His response was cryptic, just a brief message that read, "I need a place ASAP. Willing to pay double if you don't ask questions." Desperation led me to agree, and we quickly arranged for him to move in. Victor arrived in the dead of night, his face concealed by a hoodie and sunglasses. He carried only a duffel bag, and there was something about his demeanor that sent shivers down my spine. I chalked it up to nerves and exhaustion, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Over the next few weeks, I did my best to avoid Victor. He rarely left his room, and when he did, it was always at odd hours. The few times I did catch a glimpse of him, he appeared gaunt and disheveled, as though he hadn't slept in days. I began to suspect that he was involved in something illicit, but I didn't dare confront him. I needed the money too badly. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard strange noises coming from Victor's room. It sounded like hushed voices and the clinking of glass. I crept to my bedroom door, trying to get a better listen. My heart raced as I realized that he was speaking in a language I couldn't understand, punctuated by eerie chants and whispers. Fear gnawed at me, but I couldn't bring myself to confront him. Instead, I reached for my phone and called the police, telling them that I suspected illegal activity in my home. They assured me they would investigate, but I knew it wouldn't be immediate. I had to stay in my room, terrified and helpless, while the eerie rituals continued next door. Days turned into weeks, and I grew increasingly paranoid. I installed security cameras to keep an eye on Victor's comings and goings, but they only revealed more disturbing secrets. He rarely left the house, but strange, shadowy figures began visiting him at all hours of the night. Their faces hidden beneath hoods, they moved silently, like ghosts. As the days passed, I noticed changes in the house itself. The walls seemed to pulse with a sinister energy, and the air grew colder and heavier. I heard whispers in the darkness, and sometimes I could have sworn I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, but when I turned, there was nothing there. One evening, the police finally arrived to investigate. They questioned Victor and searched his room, but they found nothing to incriminate him. He seemed calm and composed, as if he had been expecting them. I couldn't understand it, and the officers left, assuring me that there was no evidence of illegal activity. I was left feeling even more isolated and terrified. Victor had to know I had called the police, and I feared what he might do in retaliation. I decided it was time to confront him, to demand that he leave my home and end this nightmare. Summoning all the courage I could muster, I knocked on his door. There was no response. I called his name, but still, nothing. With trembling hands, I pushed the door open, and what I saw will haunt me forever. Victor's room was empty, but the walls were covered in strange symbols and markings, drawn in what looked like blood. The air was thick with a foul stench, and a dark, swirling portal seemed to hover in the center of the room. I stumbled back in horror, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. As I turned to flee, a bone-chilling voice whispered in my ear,
"You should never have called the police."
I spun around, but there was no one there. The voice continued, taunting me, as I raced down the hallway and out of the house. I never returned to that place, and I never saw Victor again. The police could find no trace of him, and the house itself had changed. It stood empty, abandoned, and tainted by the malevolent forces that had been unleashed within its walls. To this day, I can't explain what happened in that house or who Victor truly was. All I know is that I stumbled into a world of darkness and terror that I can never forget. And I pray that I never encounter anything like it again. I've always considered myself a savvy online shopper, never falling for scams or sketchy deals. That was until I encountered something on Craigslist that would shake me to my core and leave me questioning my own judgment. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon when I stumbled upon a listing titled, "Vintage Camera Collection Must Sell Fast." I'd been collecting vintage cameras for years, and the thought of acquiring a whole collection was too tempting to resist. The seller, going by the name Shutterbug94, was offering the lot at a ridiculously low price. A camera enthusiast's dream, or so I thought. I quickly sent a message to Shutterbug94, expressing my interest. To my surprise, I received an immediate reply. Shutterbug94. Glad you're interested. Meet me at the abandoned warehouse on 5th Avenue at midnight. Don't be late. The urgency in the response was unusual, but I attributed it to the desire for a quick sale. Excitement and curiosity took over, and I agreed to meet at the warehouse later that night. As the evening wore on, my enthusiasm began to wane, replaced by a growing sense of uneasy. The location was odd, and meeting at midnight seemed unnecessarily secretive. However, I decided to go through with it, thinking that maybe the seller just valued their privacy. The rain had intensified by the time I arrived at the warehouse. It was an eerie, desolate place, its windows shattered and its walls covered in graffiti. The faint glow of my phone's flashlight illuminated my path as I cautiously made my way inside. Inside the warehouse, I found a single, dimly lit room, filled with vintage cameras of all shapes and sizes, just as the listing had promised. My heart raced with excitement as I examined the collection, but that excitement soon turned to dread as I realized I was not alone. From the shadows emerged Shutterbug94, their face hidden beneath a hooded jacket and their voice muffled.
"You like what you see?"
They asked, their tone unnerving. I stuttered out a response, my unease growing by the second. Something was off about this encounter, something that sent shivers down my spine. Shutterbug94 gestured for me to come closer to a table covered in cameras. As I approached, I noticed a peculiar camera, one that I hadn't seen before. It was old and weathered, its lens cloudy.
"This one's special,"
Shutterbug94 said, their voice dripping with malice. Suddenly the room grew colder and I felt a presence behind me. I turned to see a group of masked individuals emerging from the shadows, surrounding me. Panic surged through me as I realized the horrifying truth. I had walked into a trap. One of the masked figures lunged at me, grabbing my arm with a vice-like grip. Shutterbug94 revealed a knife, glinting ominously in the dim light. The camera collection had been a ruse, a way to lure unsuspecting victims into this nightmarish encounter. I fought back with every ounce of strength I had, struggling to break free from their grasp. Adrenaline coursed through my veins as I managed to land a blow, causing my assailant to release their hold on me. With a burst of desperation, I sprinted toward the exit, my heart pounding in my chest. The masked figures pursued me relentlessly, their footsteps echoing through the warehouse. It felt like a deadly game of cat and mouse, with my life hanging in the balance. Just as I reached the door, one of the assailants grabbed my ankle, causing me to stumble and fall. I watched in horror as Shutterbug94 approached, the knife gleaming in their hand. It was a nightmare come to life, and I was sure this was the end. But fate had other plans. Suddenly, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air, growing louder by the second. The masked figures, panic in their eyes, released their hold on me and scattered into the darkness. Shutterbug94 hesitated for a moment before fleeing as well. I lay on the wet warehouse floor, gasping for breath as the police arrived. They had been tipped off by an anonymous caller who had heard my struggles. It was a stroke of luck, the only thing that had saved my life that night. As I recounted the harrowing encounter to the police, I couldn't help but wonder about Shutterbug94's true motives. What had driven them to set up such a sinister trap on Craigslist? The answer remained a mystery, but one thing was clear. I had narrowly escaped a horrifying ordeal that would forever haunt my nightmares. My trust in online deals had been shattered, a chilling reminder that sometimes the line between a bargain and a deadly encounter can be dangerously thin.